Hello, I'm glad you could join me. I am Vicky Manitou Okas, and today we're continuing the container gardening challenge. So we have, so far, this is the day that we have been leading up to. So far, we have covered your goal and your reason for having a container garden. We've covered the space. So how much space you got, where the space is, and all of the specifications of creating a space for your garden. We have talked about the container. We've also discussed the soil, but this is what we're leading up to, the plants. Okay, we have to have everything else, but the plants are the reason that we're doing this. Okay, almost any plant can be grown in a container if you have a big enough container and if you start with a baby plant. Some plants are better suited than others for container gardening. Uh, some some plants will just sit there and pout, okay? And some plants prefer the constrained conditions of a container. I have put together, or I am in the middle of a project called 52 Plants for Small Spaces. Right now, I have 35 that are basically done, and I am getting them ready to go in the classroom, and they'll be split into herbs, vegetables, and fruits. Okay, so that is a resource to check for plants that you might be interested in that are highly suitable for small spaces. Okay. There will also be a quick check chart so that you can check the thumbnail view of the plants instead of going through the entire plant profile to see which plants on a thumbnail view are going to be most suited for the conditions that you can give them. Okay. So you've got I will be adding plant profiles over time. I've got 35 written. I will get them added to the classroom as fast as I can. And the other resources will be should be in there very soon if they're not in there now. Uh, and so now we've talked about your goals, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through those plant profiles and charts, and we're gonna choose plants that fit your goal. So if you are looking for salad once a week or greens once a week, you're gonna go through and you're gonna go through the vegetables and herbs and find herbs and vegetables that are suitable for a salad or a greens dish once a week, or however often you want it. Depends on how much you grow. If you're looking for um, vegetables, there are vegetables that are suitable for tiny gardens. So you're going to match the vegetable to your space. Right now I am growing tiny gardens for herbs, for cooking, and for medicine. So that's my goal right now. I am developing tiny gardens or getting ready to develop tiny gardens in space for a four seasons harvest. Okay. Is your primary purpose for growing the garden beauty and to have plants? Is it for the aroma? So whatever your goal is, and we've already gone through the goal setting. So whatever your goal is, you those are the specific plants that you're going to be looking at that will fit that goal. If it fits more than one category, that is great too. Okay. You're also going to look at matching the plants to the space that you have. So, the footprint. How much width and depth, how much foot space does it take? How much light does it need? There are plants that require very little light, not very many, okay? But if you have low light conditions, that restricts the number of plants that you can use unless you supplement that light. How tall is that plant going to be? And what is your height? How tall can you grow plants? How much support can you give a plant? So if you've got a climbing plant, that is a great way to grow a lot of productivity in a small amount of space. But you have to have a way to support that height. Okay. Do you need plants that are short and compact? So if you're going to put in a shelving system, you want shorter plants. If you're going to have them climbing, then that climbing trellis is a good idea too. Or there's ways of combining both, and that's a matter of how creative that you can get with creating your space. So a wire shelf is a great way to have shelvings for short plants and a trellis at the same time on the same structure. So, they make sure that you pay attention to the weight. You don't want to put a lot of weight on a shelf that is not going to hold it. Okay. Can you go in layers? Okay. One of the permaculture premises is to grow in layers. So, to creating a food forest, you've got your trees, you've got your middle layer, and you've got your under layer. That principle can be utilized in a small indoor space as well if you have the structures to support it. Okay? And that's maybe just a matter of time and creativity. Always, always, always. I'm talking about a lot of different ways, but start small. Start with one. Start small, start simple, start easy. So you're going to start with, especially if you've never uh, container gardened before, start with one. Set up one that is simple and easy and compact that you can move around. Um, this is your learning garden. Your first criteria for plants for or my first criteria for plants for a tiny garden is that they have a small footprint. Okay. And some of the examples of an example of a plant that can have either a small footprint or a large footprint is a tomato. So the traditional way of growing tomatoes is to plant the tomato plant in the ground and let it sprawl. Okay, that takes up a lot of space for a plant that does not need a lot of root space. So, and I do that outside. I put a tomato plant in a 5-gallon bucket outside, and then just let it sprawl over the side of the bucket and take up as much space as it wants. But if I was going to constrict the amount of space that that tomato took up, I would trellis it. So I'd put it in the 5-gallon bucket, but I would have it growing upwards instead of cascading. So just because it takes up a small footprint for its roots does not mean that the plant itself is going to take up a small footprint. And then, do you want it to cascade or do you want it to climb? Okay. Another example is a lettuce plant. So one lettuce plant can be very, very productive, and a lettuce plant takes is a very small footprint. Okay. It usually takes more than one lettuce plant to keep you supplied with a vegetable. But each individual lettuce plant takes very little space. Okay. A rosemary plant can be a very small plant or it can be a very large plant. And that depends upon pruning and the size of container that you have it in. So sometimes the footprint is determined by the container. Sometimes the footprint is determined by the plant itself. And there are ways of adjusting how much space that plant takes up. And I'll show you an example of a mini garden in a little bit. Okay. Most of the time, when I am looking for plants for container gardening, I want plants that have shallow roots. Don't take that too literally, okay? But most of the time, the shallow rooted plants are going to do better in a container garden. So I would start with shallow rooted plants, and there's a lot of them that you can choose, and then break the rules when you've got some experience. So, yeah, I mean, you can don't take that too literally, but start with the shallow rooted plants. Okay. The one of the things that you can make your life easier or harder with container gardening is the plants that you choose to grow together. So, if you pick companion plants for the tiny garden that require the similar same growing conditions, that makes your life a lot easier to taking care of the container gardening. If you choose plants to go together that have different growing conditions, it can be done, but it's a much more difficult garden to manage. So, for example, plants that are easy to grow together would be rosemary, thyme, and oregano. Okay, they're both Mediterranean plants that like well-drained soil and slightly arid conditions, and they have similar dormancy requirements. So when you're looking at plants to put together, you're looking at the water, you're looking at the drainage, you're looking at the sun. How much light does it require? What's the temperature range that it likes? And what is the dormancy or chill period that that plant needs? So again, to take for a garden that is easy to take care of, you want to match the water, the drainage, the sun or light requirements, the temperature, and the dormancy period. And I cover all of this in the plant profiles for the plants that I recommend for container gardening. Okay. So this is the one that gets me, okay, consistently, is your tolerance for fussiness. I I keep trying plants that have a high fussiness quotient, and I don't get along with them because I don't have very much tolerance for temperamental plants. Okay, so don't go there. Okay, I don't go there anymore. I don't recommend that's where anybody start. Okay, start with easy. If you like fussiness and you like fiddling with stuff, uh, work with that later. Okay, but that's fun if that's what you like. If you like constantly fussing with the plants, but start with easy. Start with easy. Play with fussy later. Okay, the work with your dimensions. Okay, we've already covered this a little bit with the space, but when you think in 3 dimensions instead of two, that opens up a lot of possibility for effectively utilizing the space that you've got and getting more out of your footprint. So, climbing plants are a great way to get more productivity out of your space if you can support them. Hanging baskets and draping plants are another really good way to get more productivity out of your plants. So, a draping plant or a climbing plant are really good companion plants for some other plants for a container garden because then you're utilizing a third dimension, not just not just your flat space, but then you start like looking at your height. Okay, that gives you more productivity in your space. So you're thinking in three dimensions, not just two. Okay. And also think about the height of your plants when you are working with your plants. So sometimes okay, your plants are going to work in strata. Okay. So you've got some plants that are tall plants. Even if you're not putting them on a trellis, you've got plants that are tall plants. You have plants that are medium plants, and have plants that are ground huggers. Okay. And those, when you are planting those together, then you're utilizing a number of layers at the same time in the same container, and that makes a much more effective use of the space and the nutrients, um, and your time. And show an example of one container garden in a minute here. So, personally, I prefer plants that have a continual or extended harvest, but that's personal preference. Okay. Uh, So decide what kind of time frame that you're playing with. Okay. So do you want a one and done? Is this an experiment that you're playing with and you just want to play with it for 4 weeks, assess what you've got, how it went for you, and then turn around and do it again. Okay. That's a different goal or a different garden than a project that's going to run you for 3 to 5 years. Okay. Those are different plants. And the one and done is a really good place to start. So if you want if you want something that's fast, easy, and a quick win and a quick learning experience, start with the microgreens. Okay. So microgreens or baby greens, that is a really, really good place to start. They require very little light because you're not growing them to maturity. Okay. And it's good nutrition and it doesn't take up very much space. Um, Microgreens or baby greens is something that most people can do on the countertop if you want to. Okay. So that you're talking 2 to 4 weeks on a microgreen or a baby green to get a result and assess how it went for you. Or you can go for salad greens. Okay. Now you're talking a couple of months. Okay. It's still quick, but it's an annual vegetable that you can grow and have pick your own salad every once in a while. And it is a valuable skill to learn. Yeah, it's still a valuable skill to learn. It's quick and it get your feet wet. Okay. If you're looking for more of a vegetable or a little bit longer, something like a snap pea or a onion, Yes, there are some of your more substantial vegetables that you're actually producing for the fruit of the plant rather than the salad itself. I don't think that those are quite as productive for the most part as a salad green or the herbs. But something like a tomato or a snap pea can be a valuable crop in a container. A Annual herbs have a more continual harvest over an extended period of time or over the season than, say, a salad green does. So they are a little bit more sustained, it's a little bit more involved, but annual herbs like parsley or basil, um, s give you a little bit more extended harvest and a little bit more time of productivity relative to what you spent planting it. But you're also gonna take care of it for longer, okay? Where I usually go with most of my container gardens is perennial herbs. So, then you're talking, um, up to years, okay? So I've got rosemary, I've got thyme, I've got bay, aloe vera, so we're talking, um all of those cases we're talking at least 3 to 5 years and preferably longer than that for the productivity in that garden. So, those are like I said, I personally prefer a continual harvest over something that I'm gonna plant it, harvest it, and then replant it again. But again, that's just a matter of choice. And those are all things that are covered in the plant profiles, what you would can expect for the harvest on the various different plants. So, now you've got all your basics. If you're going to do a no, try this again. Pick a focus plant, okay? Whatever your goal is, pick a focus plant. So if your goal is to have salad greens, then your focus plant might be a mixed salad garden mix or mesclun mix that you maybe harvest at an immature stage, okay? Or your focus might be a romaine lettuce, which is a single plant that grows a little bit bigger, and you're gonna pluck a couple of leaves off of it. Or it might be a more of a leaf lettuce, okay? But you're gonna start with a focus plant, and that is going to determine the other plants that you can put in your garden, okay? Because you want to match the conditions that the other plants grow in to whatever your focus plant is, okay? So if you're looking for something that's a little more decorative, um, a mini rose bush is a beautiful, beautiful container plant. Well, you can take that plant and you can plant some herbal ground covers around it and some plants, some like chives or other herbs behind it and around it so that you've got a fairy garden or a mini garden that your focus plant is the rose, and you've got some harvestable herbs that you're planting with your rose plant, okay? And I have a, um, container garden behind me that I'm gonna show you in a minute that I have chosen my focus plant, and then I have chosen some companion plants for to complement the herbal qualities and to contrast. So when I plant a container garden, whether it is culinary or decorative, I look for some aesthetics in there as well. So I'm looking for complementary and contrast in the way it looks and in the herbs that I'm getting out of it. So I'm gonna let me get that out. Okay, this is a rosemary garden that I have had for 3 years. And I had this out in display today. Okay. Now, I'm not going to say this is ideal. Okay. But this is my rosemary garden. Okay. And I planted this in an old roaster. I drilled holes in the bottom of it. Okay. That's only about 4 inches deep. That's not ideal. Okay. Ideally, a garden like this would be 6 or 8 inches deep, but this is the container I had, and it's working. It's 3 years old. Okay. And you tip that a little bit. Okay. I just about 4 weeks ago, I trimmed that back, opened up the center, and I'm kind of spreading that out a little bit, creating a kind of a scraggly bonsai. Okay. And in the front there, okay, that's my contrasting plant. That's creeping thyme. Now, creeping thyme is not as flavorful as garden thyme is, but this I can cook with this, and that's a medicinal plant. So I've got rosemary and I've got thyme, okay, and then I've got a third plant in there, okay. That is chives, okay. Now I broke some rules with this, right? And I'm going to explain the rules that I broke with it, but I'm going to put it down first. Okay. I just got done telling you to match conditions of the plants that you've got in your garden. I did not. Okay. I also said that match your pot to the condition of the match your pot to the plants, and I did not. Okay. Rosemary would prefer to have a pot that is twice that depth. Okay. But I put it in there as a tiny little cutting. It was the size of my finger, right? So it has been that plant is 3 years old. It was that big when I put it in there. Okay. And I've been trimming it and babying it since then. So those roots spread laterally instead of deep. Okay. That's why I got away with planting it in that 4 inch deep container. Okay. The creeping thyme likes shallow conditions, and both the creeping thyme and the rosemary like a little bit dry. Okay. And they like heat. So they like having full sun, warm conditions, and well drained soil and slightly dry. Then I put chives in there. Chives like moisture. Okay. And they don't need a very deep pot, but they like a deeper pot as well. But chives like lots of moisture. Okay. And chives like cooler weather. Yeah, the big issue there is the dormancy period. All three of those plants need a dormancy period, but rosemary and thyme have a very minimal dormancy period. Like, if I put that rosemary plant between freezing and 40 degrees for 4 weeks, that's enough of a dormancy period for the rosemary. That's also enough dormancy for the thyme. It's not enough dormancy for the chives. Chives really prefer to have an 8-week dormancy period and at colder temperatures than the rosemary. So while the rosemary and the thyme are thriving in that pot, I have to keep replacing the chives just because I like them in there. So that makes that particular planting a little bit more challenging. So, like I said, you can do it, but it much makes life easier if you match the conditions that your plants are growing in. So if you've got tropical, plant tropical. Okay. If you've got subtropical, plant subtropical. Low water requirements, moisture, high water requirements. Yeah, try to keep some consistency in your container garden. I've got several others, but that is the one that I actually broke the rules in. So, okay. So that covers the 5-day challenge. Okay, and you have everything that you need to plant your own plan and plant your own container garden. Now, I have set up one more session, but I think what I will do with that is I do not have internet access to my plant where I actually plant the plants. So I'm going to try and figure out uh, how to do a planting from beginning to end tomorrow or for the next session. So at any rate, I'm glad you joined me and come play in the dirt with me. So tomorrow we're going to do a bonus section. Thank you.